waiting anxiously. So yes, I'm very much pleased to welcome Professor Paola Rizzi, University of Sassari, our long-lasting friend and colleague in projects and teaching. Nice to see you, Paola. The title of the presentation by Professor Rizzi is the following: In the Age of Extreme Present, which is the future of urban cultural heritage, ? So please, Paola, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to share my screen. And thank you for the organizer that invite me to the conference. I hope that we have not disturbed, because I'm in Bangkok actually. So my speech that I will try to keep short and in time is related especially with the two kind of disasters, and disasters that are physical and not physical and affect our cultural, historical centers. And my question is, which is the future of urban cultural heritage, especially according with the culture that we are in today? So everybody knows that when we talk about historic heritage, we talk about historic territory, that is the Gubbio Charter in 1990, and the historic urban landscape, that is the chart, the UNESCO in 2011. But let's say the Gubbio chart, especially for the historical center in Italy, somehow extended the conception of cultural heritage to the entire territory. Meanwhile, the historic urban landscape chart of UNESCO extended to something that is even more tangible, intangible, contemporary, that is the landscape. There are different steps in the shaping this concept in Italy. The first one is one from my master, Giovanni Astenco, that in 1968, during the first charter of Gubbio, officially established the concept of historical center. And let's say the concept at that time was related, till that time, sorry, was related a lot with the conservation and preservation of monuments instead of the preservation of the historical value of the society that is living in territory. One of important plan that regards the historical center, everybody knows, of course, is the fact that we have the master plan of preservation of Bologna. And another of my master, Pierluigi Cervellati, in 2013, after the earthquake of L'Aquila, said something that for me is quite important. Stones are not to be used if there are no citizens there. And also another quotation is, I never asked myself the problem of exclusively healing the social. If I had, I would have destroyed the principle of the city. And this is a sort of a mistake that it was made in L'Aquila. Anyhow, when we talk, especially in Italy, I'm talking still of the problem in Italy, about cultural heritage, we are talking about a characteristic of a built environment that is a compact city that has cultural features, that has a vulnerability, and of course that is tangible, intangible, contemporary. And when we want to describe, to investigate it, we are following 5 more important elements that are through the morphology and the shape of the city. We are able to shape and to define emerging urban environmental problems that are related with the period of the urbanization or expansion, whatever it is. There are scholar institutions that, of course, protect that. Not only the international like UNESCO, but also the national one like Institute of National Urban Planning. There are different charts to refer to that, There are planning laws, and we have a crucial aspect, especially related with the implementation of conservation. And somehow, since 1967, they enhanced the concept of historical heritage and cultural heritage. And it's, again, something where the planning approach is usually stacking, because is conservation the main aim that we are working with. So when we talk about historical centers, what we think is the famous, perspectiva that we have here. But the fact is that we are facing such kind of situation where the level of vulnerability, I have to remind you that I'm an urban planner, and my main focus in the research in urban planning and design is disaster mitigation. We are working on such kind of environment where the level of vulnerability is really high. And in such kind of environment, it happens that, let's say, like this is Santo Stefano di Sessagno in Abruzzo, one of the most famous borghi Italiani. And you see, it was destroyed during the earthquake in 2009, and is almost rebuilt. And here you have what is the, let's say, not only the image, but is also what was the use of such kind of historical center. This is San Stefano di Sessagno has an interesting story, because it was restored as one of the most expensive bed and breakfast that you can find in Italy, because the tourists that went to Santo Stefano di Sessagno and occupy, for instance, all the small village, the municipality has 120 almost inhabitants, were rich people for wedding. One of the most famous was a wedding where the people spent, I think, 1 million or something like that from India of euro. So is it that what we are expecting? Or another historical center that was destroyed by the earthquake in 2009 is the city of L'Aquila. Those are pictures taken, I'm sorry, I'm not going there since late 2019, but these are the picture taken at that time. And is an historical center that is almost rebuilt. There are some problems related with public monuments, but it's almost rebuilt. But there is a problem there. There is a problem that no one lives there right now, and we don't know who is going to live there. Is an historical center that somehow is probably facing the same event or the same dynamic that we face in the Friuli earthquake. Exactly today, at 9 in the evening, in the 6th of May in 1976, Friuli was eaten by a disastrous event that was an earthquake. Almost all the small centers in Friuli are rebuilt, but they are rebuilt for who? Nobody is living there. And we face a well-preserved historical center, frozen, with an urban sprawl that is covering all what is outside, let's say, using extramania as expression, that let's say out of the walls. But there are something that happened that could be a good, that has a good potentiality. Let's say, like you can see here, and in the picture before, there are no cars in L'Aquila actually, and usually 12,000 of cars were occupying the public ground and external ground, open space in before the earthquake. Actually, they are expelled from the historical center, but they are coming back. So another thing is that from the point of view of revitalization, sustainability, blah, 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 workability of historical center, maybe you are losing an opportunity. So this is just a quick diagram that show you if we have to do with the complexity of the dynamic and the elements that are composing the urban system, we have also to cope with the fact that doesn't matter where we are, if we are prone to some hazard or others, actually all are prone to some risk. And there are the two cycles combined have to be, in our opinion, carefully cared, because otherwise you will follow here that there is, you know, a state of the urban environment that is has a certain level of vulnerability, and this level of vulnerability through the transformation, the only thing that happened actually is that is increasing. So we are in a hyper, I mean, our historical center seems to be frozen in the physical armor, in the physical structure, but we are living, in fact, in a hyper-connected, but is yet polarized, isolated world, where now governs everything, our thoughts, our actions, our way to communicate. I'm here in Bangkok and participating from Italy and participating in a conference in Krakow. This is a situation that is not new for us, but the dimension of it is quite new for us. So the impact of the technology, we know that changed our way to see the reality, our way to think about it, the way how we live our lives. So it's a sort of intangible that is governing the tangible and the physical, and the lockdown and the COVID and the pandemic somehow has laid bare the fragilities of this global, interconnected, hyper-connected reality, and preparing us to a sort of situation that we are not ready for, and to think about the disasters. So I like this picture taken from the age of earthquake, how we a guide to extreme present, that is a book that shows us how we have changed the structure of our cities, of our environment, but we didn't change much our brain, the structure of our brain. Instead, we have changed the structure of our planet. And could this kind, anyhow, as we are living in this environment, in this cultural environment, could it help us to provide solution to ease the increasing pressures that we are feeling? COVID has accelerated everything that we, as I said before, we knew, but we didn't know on such a large scale, so wide perspective, and make us to rethink all the space that we are living. So let's say we are looking how to transform our lives, not how to transform our physical environment. Sorry. And talking about one of the things that we, as a planner, I think that you are overwhelmed with cross-posting of a lot of post-pandemic city, how we have to think about the city after the pandemic, are the historical centers that are in decay, in demographic decrease, etc. How could they help us in order to live better? How can we change us? We can change them in order to live better? Are we sure that that we have to change something, that we can to change something. I lived in Venice for more than 20 years. And let's say I live where, there is this mall there. It was my flat. And this was the situation that I normally lived in Venice when there were, the peak of the tourists, of the flows. I guess that at least once in your life you have been in Venice and you experience such kind of things. And not to talk about the presence of those cruise ships that in the last 15 years are ruining completely the environment. So is that the situation that we want when we talk about, let's say, preserving for what? Because what is left from these are images taken, of course, from the web that show us how is Venice today. I can, living in Venice for 20 years, I can tell you that I never saw Canal Grande in such a situation, except probably when I was really young in February or January. That was the moment where tourists were not there. And you can see here the two pictures that compare the situation before the pandemic and after. And yes, but those people want this. Maybe yes, maybe not, because people want the pictures that we have seen before. So we have to think in this frame and fragmented talk that I'm talking to you, because this is a result of reflection that I'm doing with a colleague of mine from UCL in London about the visible reconstruction and the post-COVID, is that we have to cope not only with the physical disaster that can affect our historical center, but we have to cope also with something that is not tangible, that can destroy or can affect severely some behaviors, some use of the space, some social learning about the space that is quite important, especially in the historical center. So I have no answer to what could be or which is the future of urban cultural heritage after pandemic and in the age of the extreme present that we are facing right now. What I think is that we have to look at it and not look at, with the eyes of romantic vision that we are going to live all in the small villages in the mountains, in Switzerland, in Italy, because everybody is going to work and is connected and is working, is smart working. Few of us can do this. First. Second, my friend sociologist, let's say, teach to me that we are a social animal. So we need to have a society around us, and it could be done only in a physical environment that has the characteristic that I mentioned before, compact, with a lot of interconnections, with a lot of relations that are not virtual at all. Thank you so much. I hope that I was in the time.
Yes. Wonderful, Paola, as always. Excellent, insightful story about redesigning the city after the catastrophe. Wonderful, yes. Now we have Dr. Jana Pecznikowa and Dr. Wiera Kreszakowa from Matej Bell University in Banska Bystrica, our partner for years, with the contribution on reflections on industrial heritage transformation in Slovakia based on case study. So Jana and Wiera, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Can you see the presentation as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So with my colleague Janka Pecnikova, hello to everybody first. With my colleague Janka Pecnikova, I would like to introduce to you our topic, reflections on industrial heritage and transformation in Slovakia, which has been researched as a part of our project, where we participate with the other universities from Krakow, L'Aquila, and Bilbao. At the beginning, I would like to be quite short. I would like to introduce to you first what industrial heritage is. There are remains of industrial cultures, but what is important also for the next part of our presentation is what everything belongs to the industrial heritage. And according to this definition, there are various structures they belong to the industrial heritage: machinery, workshops, factories, mills, warehouses, etc. But what is for our presentation important, they also include transport structures and all the infrastructure related to the industry. Abandoned, I'm not saying anything new or surprising when I say that the abandoned and unused industrial monuments are a challenge for the surroundings, as we can see the real pictures. Why? Because there is no possibility in original use or purposes, because there are found some other resources in the other regions of the world. As an example, we can take mines, or the production of factories and companies is no longer economically viable, or simply they were damaged. What is the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is to find a suitable and feasible further use. Often they are aesthetically quite attractive. They were made. I have read research that in many minds of the people talking about industrial heritage, usually they have an experience, or they imagine some unattractive, rusty, big houses or factories they wouldn't like to have in their surrounding. The restoration or modernization would be quite expensive. They are quite uncertain to their profitability when they would be restored, as we have seen, as we have heard some steps before. They can't be used any longer because they were found some other more economical places or some other technologies. There are different interests, especially with local authorities or local people. Or there is also a problem which also concerns our case study we are going to talk about, that there is, especially in abandoned rural regions, there is a shortage of professional or educated staff or ideas what to do with the industrial heritage. And it's not always easy simply to recognize the potential of abandoned industrial heritage. So there would be, or there is a good, I don't want to say the best, but very good solution for industrial heritage: transformation or adaptive reuse. It could be a solution for the preservation of monuments. It is not new. This form of preservation is not new because, for example, when reuse of materials, of building materials from ancient buildings were used, for example, on St. Peter's Basilica, when it was built, we know that material from ancient buildings were used here. Or, for example, original use of objects. Some objects was replaced by a new one. I wanted to take a quite or well-known example, Louvre, which used to be a former royal residence of French monarchs. And now it is a national museum and art gallery. So examples in this case, or for example, when we are talking about Paris, we can take Musée d'Orsay, which used to be a railway station, and now it is also a art gallery. The place or the case or the monument we are going to talk about is the forest railway, Čiernohronska železnička, called in Slovak. It is in the middle Slovakia. You can see the dot in the middle, just to make it more interesting, or you can imagine where the place is. It is in the middle Slovakia, and these advantages of this region is the rapid depopulation, because we know through this through the transmission to market economy, the young people, they simply leave this region to Bratislava or to Czech Republic or to Vienna, which is not far away, to find better jobs. Another problem is that according to Slovak National Statistic Office, it doesn't belong to first or to top 10 attractive tourist areas in Slovakia. But there are also advantages on the other side. There are in the area of Middle Slovakia, of the Banská Bystrica region, the most industrial monuments in whole Slovakia. Of course, in bad conditions. And another advantage I would like to mention, of course, there are also much more disadvantages, much more advantages. I have chosen just the most important for our presentation, is the nature. This part of Slovakia, as I said, doesn't belong to top 10 touristic attractive places, as for example, High Tatras, but Low Tatras are not far away from here. But this area has a very, very nice nature, and as advantage we can take not too many tourists, especially in this pandemic period, where we have to keep distance from each other. Very, very briefly about the history of this forest railway. It was built at the beginning of 20th century, started to operate in 1909, and the final length was almost 132 kilometers. The aim was it used to transport logs from the forest down to sawmills in the surrounding villages. As you can see on the picture, this is the original picture from the beginning of 20th centuries. From the 20th century, where the railway station was built. Okay, there were new and more efficient technologies came in 80s. So after this, in 80s was where all forest railways in Slovakia closed and disassembled. In total, there were 40 forest railways, and almost all.
No.
Excuse me. Nothing. Okay. I try to keep the attention to the time, so probably I am talking too fast, but I don't want to talk too long. So, as I said, all 40 forest railways were destroyed, were closed, and also the railway in Čierny Balog we are talking about was closed, but not destroyed. Okay. Excuse me? In 1982, it was put on the list of National Heritage of Slovakia, which actually was the most important step to save this heritage. And in 1983, actually this situation, or the fact that this forest railway was saved, we have to thank to enthusiasts, to a person, former employee of the forest railway, and he couldn't have imagined that such a that time also important source of making a living for the local people could be destroyed. At least it was important as an industrial monument. So 1982, it was put on the list of National Heritage of Slovakia. And 1983 started the reconstruction of the railway. And what is quite important, and I would like to stress on the volunteer base. Probably you Polish colleague, you would remember also from your country that in 80s there was in former socialistic countries popular these traditions of volunteer summer camps. There took part students or also the local people. It was the same. It was the case also of this railway, where on the summer camps took part students, enthusiasts from other regions, but also the local people. And thanks to them, it was the railway rescued. Now today it is a popular tourist attraction, transporting tourists in the open air museum of forestry and wood technology. It is also a non-profit organization, so and the aim is the conservation, protection, and redevelopment of the industrial heritage using the original narrow gauge lines and also original infrastructure. They also use the original steam and diesel-powered locomotives for transporting tourists. The locomotives and wagons, they are taken from whole country, from Slovakia, but also from Czech Republic. They have their own workshops. Old steam-powered locomotives, you can see on my left side, an old locomotive which was found in the eastern part of Slovakia in these conditions. And on the right side, you can see the locomotive, the same locomotive after it has been maintained and also by enthusiasts, partially by professional companies. And today, the locomotive is used or has been used in the forest railway, transporting people. Also, the original wagons, they are adapted. Some of them, they are just transporting people. Some of them, they are adapted for other marketing reasons. As you can see, for example, as a little restaurant, let's say. What is important, what we did as a part of our research, is the growing number of transported tourists. I said that the region, partially you can also see on the pictures that in the background, where the pictures with the locomotive, that it is quite abundant area with nice nature, but not quite interesting or attractive for tourists, especially for foreign tourists. But thanks to this transfer or transformation of the railway to this attraction, the amount of the tourists has been rising up every year. Okay, for example, you can see from 2015 to 2019 there are changes and the numbers of the tourists has gone down, but it is thanks to the development and in the surrounding, because in the surrounding they were found, they were opened for the tourists some other attractions. So, and the number has gone a little bit down, but still, when we compare it with the beginning of where this attraction, where the forest railway started to operate, it is quite a big difference. What is also important for the
Vera, excuse me, if you could conclude, please.
Okay, I will go to the conclusion. Okay. So, what is important? It is a quite important tool for a circular economy, using the continual use of resources, eliminating waste, and using it for some other economical or for some other reasons. It is a tool for maintaining sustainability, or also as an ecological tool, transporting people, not using some electrical machines, etc. It is a new meaning to an abundant industrial place, and also some other activities are possible. Also for the area, for the village, it is a new aesthetic experience, as you have seen on the pictures. Of course, developing the industrial tourism, especially in the area where not too many tourists come. And as last is the economical development for the local population. And I would like, last but not least, volunteering as a form or the way how we can build also the relationship of the people to our heritage. That was it. Excuse me when I was too long, but there were plenty things to talk about. Thank you for your attention.
Excellent, splendid, wonderful, Vera. Yes, thank you very much for your panorama of insights. Wonderful. Yes, yes, and I believe we can now move to the third speaker of our panel, our colleague from the Institute of European Studies, Dr. Łucja Piekarska-Duraj, and her contribution on city museums, or how Europe promotes its values with urban stories. Łucja, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Grzegorz, and please interrupt me if I speak too long. You can do it in any way that you wish. I'd like to share my presentation with you, and already the goal of the presentation is quite ambitious, but it's also very simple, in fact, because I'd like to analyze. Could you just confirm that you see the second slide?
Yes, I believe the presentation is available. Yes, on the screen. Yes.
It is. Okay, great. So there are three goals that I'd like to complete today, and all of them would be connected with city museums in Europe. I'd like to, first of all, present some of major trends and tendencies that are quite popular today in current museology. And I'd like to refer these trends and tendencies, the knowledge or the analysis of these trends and tendencies to selected city museums of Europe. Then I would like to propose or discuss possible methodology for the effective analysis of Europeanization of heritage museums. And then the pictures that you'll see will illustrate some selected cases from city museums where we'll be looking for some selected and defined European values. So this is the very wide framework that includes 7 values that are widely considered to be European values, or values that create or compose the European program. And these 7 values were deducted from a number of European documents, but also all of them are quite widely present in European writings, theories, literature, in humanities, in arts as well. And if you can see, these 7 values are quite diverse, and diversity, by the way, is one of them as well. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to apply this framework to the analysis of city museums, because I'd like to have a look at a process that could be defined, or that could be named as Europeanization of heritage. Now, usually when we talk about Europeanization, what we mean would be applying political standards to the institutions that operate in different countries of the European Union or of Europe, understood more widely. But what I'd like to propose here would be applying specific values and implementing these specific values in operations of city museums. So the 7 values, the 7 qualities that could be seen as the fundamental values or qualities to the European idea would be progress, utility, dignity, diversity, inclusion. Then I propose narrativity and democratic governance. So if you forget the word democratic, the acronym for all of them would be pudding. So pudding is a very, and as you know, we are quite interested, or we really like to work with acronyms. So this would be probably one of the proposals that could be used in analysis of museums in sites. So my basic idea would be that generally, whenever we analyze museums, whenever we interpret visitors' experience or the narratives of museums, we would basically focus on the experience, on visitors' experience, and or we would focus on the narrative, so on the content. We would focus on what stories are told, what topics are considered to be the important one for the functioning of museums. But I'd like to change the perspective. I'd like to have a look at the values which are transmitted and which are promoted with the exhibitions in city museums. And in this way, I'd like to have a look at the Europeanization of heritage as a process that takes place, among others, in city museums. And these museums could be seen as civilizing tools. So if there is some civilizational program, then museums, whether or not they speak directly about Europe, could be seen as civilizing agents. The image that you can see now is a very famous medieval illustration or image found in one of philosophical works, and it shows how humans that are immersed in everyday experience can cross or can enter another universe, which is the universe of ideas. What I'm trying to demonstrate here today is that I'd like to discuss how specific values are present in city museums and how these values that are considered to be European values can contribute to complex identities of cities which are presented in museums. So as you remember, the first idea is progress, and progress of course could be found in a very literal sense in a number of technological museums where we could see the developments that we could observe, the developments that we could trace in terms of technology. Okay, progress, the reason why progress is so important for the European program is, on one hand, its central role within the Enlightenment philosophies, but on the other hand, and maybe it's even more important, it emphasizes on the linearity of the storytelling of Europe. This is why progress is a kind of affirmation that we are on the right track. We Europeans, we come from the past and then we move on to the future. We are on the right track. And the knowledge, the experiences get accumulated. This is the very optimistic and quite naive faith in progress that's been sometimes presented and sometimes it's also deconstructed by the European museums. What you can see here is one of the urban museums in Stockholm, the City Transport Museum, and it's one of the city museums where not only the progress or the technological progress is presented, but also the price that we pay for the progress is considered too. So the second,
Lucia, sorry for interrupting, but actually we've got stuck in terms of your slides on slide number 3. Oh, now it's, yes, on the way.
Okay, sorry for it. And thanks Grzegorz for letting me know. Okay, so just to show you, this was my image number 4. This is the image that I'd like to illustrate, where I'd like to illustrate the first very general idea of progress and linearity. And then one of major trends or tendencies in urban museums and city museums today would be to question progress and ask a question: what is the price that what's the price societies are paying for the progress? And what needs to happen if the technological progress should be at least parallel to progress in terms of social developments. So the first European value that's very much present, no matter which city we're talking about, would be progress and linearity. And the main idea would be to establish the storytelling in the linear context of story that ended in the past, that is leading somewhere to the future. Okay. The second quality that I'd like to have a look at very briefly would be the quality of utility or usefulness. Now, on one hand, what we can observe is that very many museums, not only city museums, but basically a number of museums, would focus today on giving access to their collections with the use of competence-based learning. So the museums would be funded, would be supported on a condition that they are practically useful. But what is practical usefulness, one could ask? So what you can see here is a slide, is a picture from one of city museums of Lisbon. And this is the museum that deals with the question of money and economics. The idea would be that not only the museum tells the story or reflects the history of money in Portugal, in Lisbon, and globally, but moreover, it supports the public discourse and the public debate as a whole. Yeah. So some aspects of usefulness or utility of museums in Europe that can be observed would be that good museums that are considered to be of use to the public discourse would be those who spread awareness about certain issues, but also those that emphasize partnerships with local communities. So again, utility could be observed on one hand in a context of localities, of strengthening localities, on the other hand of supporting public discourse as a whole, the discourse that's supposed to be seen as inclusive and democratic. The third value that I'd like to have a look at is probably the most important value of the European program at all, which is the value of dignity. And I'm showing here some or two maybe fragments of two exhibitions from Krakow and from Stockholm, where human skull is presented. And since it's a definitely very sensitive heritage by all means, you can see the comparison between the picture on the left, where there's a skull, but we don't really know who it belongs to or who it used to belong to. And then one might say that the dignity of the, well, let's say the owner of the skull is in a way denied, because there is no context and there is no story that would explain why we definitely need to be showing those remains of human body. Whereas on your right, you can see the opposite case, where there is a very full contextualization. Dignity in European museums means that everyone has a right to their story. If everyone has the right to their story and it can be told, then it demands adding some context. It demands basing all the exhibitions on the research, obviously, but at the same time, it is significant that the skull is presented with the presence of a person as much as we can do it. Okay, let me just check if you can see the slide. Now, the next value that we all know from the European motto, diversity and unity, is the value of diversity. Now, in museums, And here you can see the examples from Tarnów Museum, which is a city museum in Małopolska region in Poland. And then on your right, you can see the Helsinki City Museum. So diversity, on one hand, is a value that should be regarded as a strong part of any collection. As you can see, some of the objects on your left are very similar to one another. And diversity would mean that whenever you want to attract your visitors, but also whenever you want to diversify the history, the urban history of the city that you're talking about, you really need diverse objects, and you really need tackle diverse topics in your museum programs. Whereas on your right, in the Helsinki City Museum, you can see one of the attempts of diversifying visitors' audience. So diversity could be very easily applied and linked with the operation of a number of urban museums who want to locate their operation within the European value of diversity. Grzegorz, while I see your face, does it mean that I have a minute?
Yes, please, yes.
A minute, okay. So I'll just move on very briefly to the value of inclusion, which is quite understandable, because good museums would aim to include the visitors, but at the same time they would aim to include the narratives that for a long time had been marginalized. Then the next one is narrativity, which actually bases on the storytelling, and current city museums are very much focusing on telling stories, which means that they do not refer or they do not record history, but what they aim to do is they want to tell stories, and they do it in an open way. Narrativity would be the main key. Now, democracy is an aspect that I don't really have time to discuss, but the point basically is that museums of today are much more than just institutions that conserve and give access to heritage. They are real actors in the public discourse, and they don't want to be transparent, or they want to be transparent, but they don't want to be objective anymore. They won't have their say. And the conclusions for the last slide is that I'd like to point out that city museums can be seen as civilizing agents that promote some very specific ideas and values of Europe. Secondly, Europeanization doesn't necessarily mean referring to the history of Europe, but it could mean also how the exhibitions are done. And then finally, a lot of European cities are very much interested in presenting their identities in the European context. The main three trends and tendencies: there is a big trend of personalizing stories, which can be linked to some crisis of legitimacy of Europe. There is a tendency to include marginalized narratives in the stories of cities. And finally, non-official and private histories and heritages are valorized. My last slide is thank you for your attention. So thank you again. If anyone would be interested in following up with the discussion, you are more than welcome to do so. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Łucja, yes, for your truly insightful presentation on actually kind of the mythologizing of European memory seen through the fences or windows of museums. Wonderful, excellent. Yes, and now we can move to next speakers of the day. The next speakers are Dr. Mirosław Hutka from the Faculty of Arts, Department of History, Catholic University in Ružomberok, and Dr. Ivana Pondelikova, Faculty of Arts, Department of European Cultural Studies, Matej Bell University in Bańska Bystrica, and the contribution is on the interactive character of the medieval Augustinian monastery in Bardejov. So please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We are trying to upload the presentation. Please let me know once you can see it. It will take just a few seconds, probably.
Yes, it's on the way, I think. Yes, wonderful. Yes, we can now see your presentation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So I'll be presenting for both of us. So let's start. We would like to take you today to a wonderful place in Slovakia. It's a very popular spa town nowadays, but in the past it was connected to establishing monasteries and the influence of monks' activities to the development of the town and their help to local people. So today we are going to talk about the interactive character of the medieval Augustinian monastery in Slovakia. So we can move. I will start with the order of Saint Augustinian Hermit. This order was founded in 1256 by the so-called Great Union of Augustinians, when several hermits orders merged together by the bull of the Pope Innocent IV. The reason for the establishment was the development of religious life, which caused sharp increase in number of religious orders. The union included the orders of, for example, Saint William, Hermits of Brettina, Hermits of Saint John Bono, Hermits of Tuscany, and Montefiore, and the others. At the same time, the character of the order changed from hermitage to pastoral care, that is, Begin order. In 1266, the order of William regained their independence, but their monasteries in Germany and Hungary remained in the hands of Augustinians. The first hermits of William were already active in Hungary during the reign of Andrew II. Augustinian monastery of St. John the Baptist in Bardejov was established shortly before 1390. It was probably built on the initiative of the town, which also exercised patronage law. The first monks came from Krakow. General prior of the order, Bartholomew of Venice, allowed the Augustinians of Krakow, led by Brother Henry of Krakow and his followers, to settle down in monastery in Bardejov. The report further mentions that the monastery was newly established and that its future, especially which province it would belong to, was to be decided later at the general congregation. The document also mentioned that the monastery lay near the borders of Orthodox in Polish language, Galicia. In Slovak language, it's Halič. I will use all the time the Polish Galicia. In addition to pastoral care in the town, the monastery could also have the function of a mission base for the Galicia area. The first priory came from the monastery of St. Catherine and St. Margaret from Krakow. In 1428, it became the priory of monastery Isaac Bonner from Krakow, probably shortly after graduating from the University of Padua, as he already had the title of lecturer or teacher. He found the monastery relatively rich. In addition to some fields, animals, the monastery had also a relatively large amount of money, up to 600 florins. Bardejov Augustinian monastery was annexed to Hungarian province, probably in the 30s of 15th century. From the beginning of the 15th century until 1505, intensive construction of monastic buildings took place. The construction was financed mainly by the town. The first construction phase is probably related to the construction of presbytery. It's polygonal and typically large, as it is customary with mendicants. The construction phase is evidenced by the indulgence deed of the Pope Boniface IX of the 17th December 1400, which grants indulgences for the feast of St. John the Baptist. Within 5 days of this feast, in 1428, the monastery gained an income of approximately 160 florins out of these indulgences. The town took part in the construction. The donors also provided money, mainly through wills, and the Augustinians invested money as well. In 1432, part of the building was consecrated by the Bishop of Jager. In the second construction phase, the nave of the church was built. The stone elements of the window tracery were made in a quarry in the Hungarian town of Gönc. The nave of the church was valued by the master Orban, sometimes in the 19th of the 15th century. Probably the greatest testamentary legacy of monastery was the will of Dorothy, the widow of the merchant and Bardejov burgher Anton Schwarz of Reich, who died in 1490. She left the property, which was used for various purposes for the monastery. For example, 100 florins for the construction or reconstruction of monastic cells, other funds for vaulting the church, and so on. At the same time, certain budget was probably created, from which some other projects connected to monastery were later financed. For example, in 1504 and 1505, the chapel of St. Cross was rebuilt. According to her last will and testament, large silver monstrance was to be made, as well as the table altar for the nave of the church, and the pond in Dlhá Lúka was to be bought in the direction of Zborov. The interaction with the inhabitants of the town of Bardejov took place mainly on the pastoral level. Probably sometimes at the end of the 15th century, the Brotherhood of Virgin Mary was founded, whereby the Augustinians improved their pastoral activity among the believers. However, there is no much information about the activity of this fraternity. The monastery was also known for the scripture activities, and it was related to the library. Priori Isaiah Bonner sent two brothers, scribes, probably to Krakow, to rewrite the books of his interest. The Széchenyi Library in Budapest keeps these two books, and they were probably owned by Augustinians of Bardejov. The town also took care of the monastery libraries. After all, there are reports of the purchasing books from the town library as well as for the Augustinian monasteries throughout the whole 15th century. The town, as a patron, for example, in 1453 bought several legends about the saints, and in 1515 they bought missals. Some of these hagiographic legends were sold by the town shortly after the departure of monks in 1535. Brother Astexan is also one of the Augustinians, and he decorated incunabula stored in Šariš Museum in Bardejov in 1478. Sometimes in the second half of the 15th century, the Augustinians built hermitage in the cadastre of village of Zlaté na Kláštorisku, that is the valley of Mnichovský potok. It was a simple wooden building. This space was supposed to serve for the spiritual renewal and reform of religious life. A house that the town bought in 1500 from Jacob Wagner, and he gave it to the monastery, could be used for this purpose. Priori took part in various events organized by Hungarian Augustinian province. For example, Priori Ambrose participated in provincial congregation in Buda. Augustinian Michael Haustler left for university studies to probably to Rome in 1501, where he studied theology. The Hungarian provincial lent him 25 florins for this purpose. At that time, in 15th century, the average salary or wage was about 1 florin a month. So if we consider today 1,000 euros as an average salary a month, he got approximately 25,000 euros for his studies. In the second half of the 15th century, the monastery had problem with the town council. One of the oldest reports, which suggests unspecified problems, dates back to 1466, from the Pope bull, which confirmed the priori Andrew Zalzer in his office. It's unknown when the Pope's confirmation was needed, nor with whom the priori had the conflict. Similarly, in 1489, priori Christopher was expelled from the town. Hungarian provincial Gregory recommended and demanded the town council to take him back. We suppose that the cause of his expulsion didn't have anything connected to moral failure, as some historians think. The problem may have been similar as the case of Andrew Zalzer, that it is conflict of town as the patron of the monastery with the Augustinians over the rights to choose the priori. In the 15th century, the Augustinian religious center advocated a reform of religious life, which consisted of stricter compliance with the religious regulation. However, if the order wanted to push forward the reform of the Augustinian monastic life in Hungary, then the election of a priori had to take without any interference of secular power, that is the patrons, which in this case was the town. Theoretically, the principle should be enforced. The town council has no right to interfere in the election of a priori from which the mentioned problem and expulsion of priori could have arisen. There are plenty of legends regarding the life of monks in monasteries and the connection to the help of the people. Some of those legends are that monks lived a sinful life, or they were accused of stealing, but this legend didn't have any influence to local people, because they donated money, they left their properties to monasteries. I will now proceed to conclusion that this research topic encounters several issues, and one of the most significant is the lack of sources. However, compared to Augustinian monasteries from the territory of present-day Slovakia, Bardejov monastery has the advantage that it was built in a relatively large town, thanks to which at least some information about the lives of monks from the end of the Middle Age has been preserved in the town office records. The interaction of Augustinians with inhabitants of this town was certainly much more intense and obvious, but for now we do not have any more information. So from our side for today, that's all, and I would like to thank you for both of us for your attention.
Thank you indeed, Ivana, yes, for your wonderful story from the Middle Ages. Yes, yeah. Yes, medieval component in our agenda. Yes, wonderful story. Certainly worth researching. Excellent. Thank you again. And now we can move to other speakers, next speakers. Actually, we have Dr. Alina Betlej. Our next speaker is Dr. Alina Betlej from the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin. And the title of the presentation is the Creative Spaces for Meetings of Cultures Between Theory and Practice. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be with you today. My speech will be much more focused on the practice, but I would also tell something about my theoretical backgrounds, why I am interested in that topic. Maybe I will start first with this theoretical approach. Why this term of creative spaces could be still interesting for sociologists, for contemporary sociologists. A traditional assumption is that creative endeavor may guide, for example, the sustainable development of a city. Creativity is also considered to be, for example, an intrinsic property of novel, appropriate, and innovative actions. This reasoning has, of course, its limitations. Innovativeness and creative deviation are always context dependent. And external aspects of urban creativity also extend to the entire socio-economic system of a city. And of course, while arguing there are no objective criteria for creativity assessment, one should point to the important function of cultural development strategies as be interpreted as the key factor of a sustainable city transition. And this overview of theoretic approaches to urban creativity leads to the conclusion that the analysis should always be grounded in the notions of differences, perspectives, dialogue, and cultural activities. And that was the theoretical background which has interested me, and I thought that it would be very interesting to conduct such research in my city, in the Lublin city. I identified Lublin as an interesting case study because it has established many agendas and many strategies of urban sustainability and creativity. And this sustainability concept has strongly affected the policy of urban planning and has stretched beyond environmentalism to the transformation of the social and economic relations of the city. Lublin's location in a cross-border area of Polish, Jewish, and Ukrainian cultures at the center of the eastern region has emphasized the social nature of its urban creativity. The economic problems of the city have been rooted in the historic context, which has stigmatized the urban imagination and influence of the external image of Lublin for many years as a backward center with negative social capital. And recovering the traumatic history of this cultural melting pot and reviewing it in the light of current development trends shows the importance of management by the definition of values which are related to the significant spaces. The traumatic experiences of the Holocaust and the Stalinist crimes are still symbolically inscribed in the nature of the meaningful places, such as the German concentration Majdanek camp and the Lublin Castle, located in the center of the old town, which was one of the cruelest Stalinist prisons in the past. What is the most important in Lublin? The transformation can be considered as the convergence of urban spaces. And what does it mean that I can discuss the city and creative spaces? I always think about something like, for example, certain imagined structures of places and related values, related emotions, experiences, related events. I think that creativity evokes associations with perceptions and some kind of urban experience. And that was the beginning of my research, which was conducted in cooperation with Vilnius Gediminas Technical University, especially with Professor Tomasz Kacerauskas. And we divided our research at 2 stages. Last year in November, we conducted a semi-structured individual in-depth interview with cultural managers in Lublin. Our sample consisted of 10 respondents. This individual interview lasted from 30 to 35 minutes on average. and intentional sampling was performed. This research was mainly concerned with the description of a given phenomenon, the way of perceiving, experiencing, and interpreting creative spaces of meetings of cultures in Lublin by people organizing cultural events in various urban spaces. It was really very interesting because during the current analysis of these interviews with managers, it turned out that we managed to identify around 90% of all codes at the seventh interview. But we decided to widen this research, and now we are conducting much more longer interviews, which are based on more narrative approach. We are trying to combine philosophical and sociological approaches in analyzing this phenomenon, and we are asking the questions about how the creative spaces are perceived, how they are being experienced by people who use the space for organizations of cultural events, but not every cultural event. These which are based on multicultural experiences of many cultures, which are the places of meeting of many cultures. So that was our main point to find out how what is the difference between the public space and creative space of meeting of cultures in Lublin. And in our during our first interviews, it was very interesting because our respondents claimed that a creative space can be attributed a performative function. For example, maybe I will read one statement. We ask whether every space could be considered as being creative. Yes, definitely yes. In any space, you can express something, communicate to others, for example, some information. Anyone who is in a public space can perform the role of an audience. In the course of the research, we reproduced the process of stimulated activation of the city creative potential, because creative spaces our research shows that creative spaces are rooted in the symbolism of values, and this property is interpreted as the basis for reading of a city. So this procedure to decode the symbolism of creative urban spaces is the analysis of the purposefulness of the messages addressed to the recipients. It was also very interesting in this first stage of our research that creative spaces are being connected in the respondents' imagination with the notion of social exclusion, because they claim that not every man can enter such space. So it is also a kind of the problem which could be analyzed in the perspective of social exclusion. But it's the first part of our research also were connected with composing something like a model of socialization towards creativity. So we try to analyze what stages should be underlined to create a model of such socialization towards creativity. It is also, I think, it also brings a new avenue. It opens a new avenue for further research in that topic. But we didn't finish the second part of the interview, so I think that our findings, which will be written in the paper, and then it could be analyzed in future. I think that it could be all for today. A short brief a short insight in the proposal of research of understanding creativity, and of showing how sociologists and philosophers could combine their approaches to describe some new phenomena in that area. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you indeed, Dr. Betle, yes, for your wonderful story about the research project Lublin as a city of different cultures and urban creativity, yes, design for the place of the meeting. Excellent. Yes, thank you very much, yes, for your contribution and for keeping the time, yes. So we can now move to next speaker. And our next speaker is Adriana Simoncelli from Jagiellonian University. From Lublin, we are now moving to Rome. Rome, timeless capital of the world. That sounds pretty intriguing, so please, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, because my video is not really clear, but I would like at once, I just wanted to greet you, all of you, and I would prefer to deactivate my video to guarantee a better audio. So, and also I would be glad to share my presentation. So that is why I'm deactivating the video for now and trying to share my presentation as I told, and I would be pleased to know if just a moment. Can you tell me when it is visible for all?
Well, actually, first thing is that we can we have some I believe a little bit of technical problem with the volume of your microphone.
Okay, that is why because unfortunately my computer is not very powerful.
Now it's a little bit better. It's better. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have to come very near to the computer. That is why, and now
Yes,
I try
please.
again,
Okay.
To share my presentation. I hope now it will be possible. Please tell me when it is ready.
Yes, we can see your presentation now, please. Okay, wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much. I will try to do the full screen. Okay, so I would like to bring you to Rome, and Rome, of course, it's one of the most known cities in the world, and I just want to make some considerable remarks, because I suppose many of things which I will mention are very well known, but I think this is the place to remind them. So Italy is considered one of the birthplaces of Western civilization and a cultural superpower, and its capital, Rome, was the first ancient metropolis, as well as the largest city in antiquity between the 1st century before Christ and the 2nd century after Christ, reaching 1 million of inhabitants. Rome was founded, according to the legends, in 753 before Christ, and over the years its territory was always expanding, and it created one of the largest empires ever to exist on the face of the earth, and one of the most important and influential cities in history. And why Rome was named Caput Mundi? It was exactly due to this incredible influence that it has been able to achieve over the centuries. And the first who used this epithet was a Latin poet, Marcus Annus Lucan, who was living between 39 and 65 after Christ, and who was one of the three best, most important poets of this period, together with Virgilio and with Ovid. And he, in his poem Pharsalia, in 61 after Christ Anno Domini, he wrote, Ipsa caput mundi, bellorum maxima merces, Roma capo facilis, which means Rome itself, the capital of the world, the most important prey of war, easy to subjugate. But before him, there were another version of the phrase Roma caput mundi, or sometimes we can find it also as Roma caput orbis, which meaning is still Rome, the capital of the world. And this mention was made by Publio Ovidio Nasone, Ovid, who had written before Lucan in 14 before Christ in his Amores, the poem, the Loves. He wrote these words, Titerus et fruges eneide arma legentur, Rome triumphanti dum caput orbit erit, which can be translated as Titus and the messengers and weapons of Aeneas will be read until Rome is the capital of the subjugated world. So that is why Rome is called Caput Mundi, because of the greatness of its empire and the influence conquered by the city over the centuries. And for the same reason, also the emperor Frederick Barbarossa, Frederick the First, or Holy Roman Emperor, he had on his seal the motto Rome caput urbi regia orbis frena rotundi. Rome, capital of the world, holds the reins of the round world. And this motto, the motto from the seal, dates back to the times of Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, or Carolus Magnus, who was the emperor of the Romans from 800 after Christ. And here we have dimensions of Roman Empire in his best period, and this empire was uniting East and West, and because it was uniting Europe with Asia Minor and with Africa, and the area of this empire has around 6 million square kilometers. And Rome also has several different titles, and it is defined par excellence as urbs, urbe, from Latin, city, because the name urbs was indicating Rome, which was considered the city par excellence. Caput Fidei, again from Latin, capital of faith, because it was a main seat of power of the Catholic Church. The city of water, or Regina Aquarum, for its aqueducts, fountains, and symbiotic relationship with the Tiber. And Urbs Aeterna, again from the Latin, eternal city. And this phrase is coming from the Book of Elegies, Libro delle Elegie, written by Albio Tibullo, where he's constating, Romulus eterne nondum formaverat urbis moenia, nor had Romulus built the walls of the eternal city yet. And there are many hypotheses of the name from which it could derive. And if we see all these hypotheses, we can see also that Rome, and talking about Rome, it was like to crossing the different cultures. That is why Roma, it can derive from the name Roma, daughter of Italo, from Romano, son of Odysseus and Circe, from Romo, son of Amatyon, and from Romide, tyrant of the Latins, from Romulus and Remus, from Rumon or Rumen, archaic name of Tiber, from Roma, which is Etruscan name, breast, from Greek noun Rom, which means strength, from Roma, a Trajan girl who knew the art of magic, or from amor, that is the word Rom read from right to left. And this interpretation was very well discussed between the 5th and 6th centuries. And now, passing to the modern times, I would like to say few words about Sigmund Freud, who was comparing Rome, the city, to the human psyche, in which nothing that once acquired existence has disappeared. So Sigmund Freud was very fond of Rome, and he was dividing the city into 3 different Romes. But only 2 of them he found nice and pleasurable. One was Italian Rome, so the Rome of late 19th century, which was hopeful and likable. Another, it was the ancient city, which he mentions the temple of Minerva, humble and mutilated. And the third one, which was not very pleasant for him because of his Jewish origins, and it was the medieval Rome, which was a reminder of his own misery. And then the traces of ancient Rome in the modern world and its impact on shaping the European cultural heritage can consist in art and architecture, technology and science, literature and language, and law. And so, about art and architecture, Romans were very able to make improvements to certain borrowed Greek designs and inventions. And so, for example, the Romans have a very tremendous, very big impact on art and architecture. The traces of Roman influence are numerous in forms and structures throughout the development of Western culture. The arches of the Colosseum were made they were very remarkably strong building, thanks to a very remarkable strong building material, which was made by volcanic ash and volcanic rocks. So it is said that this material guaranteed the durability of the Colosseum. Another thing are the arches served as foundation of massive bridges and aqueducts that Romans created, and amphitheaters like mentioned Colosseum. Also, the sculptural art of this period was very extremely durable because they were using the marble. And so about their engineering and their contribution into the science, they knew very well the laws of physics, and that is why they developed aqueducts and better ways to add water flow. They also built an expansive road network, and that is why the system was so large that it was said that all roads lead to Rome. And another thing which is considerable, these are the tools and methods for use in agriculture. Also, Roman literature had a very deep impact on the rest of the world, and as well as Roman language, because ancient Romans spoke Latin, which spread throughout the world, and after it was the basis for a group of languages referred to as the Romance languages like French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, and Catalan. And also in English language, the Latin alphabet is used, so it was the base of European scriptures. And the use of Latin words, it was also considerable because it influenced the Western justice system. And Roman laws and their court system have served as the foundation for many countries' justice systems, such as the United States and much of Europe. So I think that these very short and general mentions can prove why Rome is still considered caput mundi, or the metropolis, the city of the world, which influenced the basis, the grounds of our European culture. Thank you very much.
Wonderful indeed. Yes, now we know better, I'm sure, why all roads lead to Rome. Yes, wonderful story about the source of the Western story. Yes, we all are very much grateful, yes, to our Rome ancestors. Yes, we are very much, yes, shaped by this heritage. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you
very well. Yes, so it seems that it's my turn now, really. So I will now try to upload my presentation. I hope I'll be successful. Yes, I hope you can see my presentation now. Right. So maybe yes. Yes, I would kindly please ask you to use the microphone and just make sure that yes, my presentation is now available on the screen, please.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I promise I won't keep you long. You see, my contribution is about actually a little bit of yes, alternative view. You see, on Mission Impossible. You see, in social science, especially in those of, I mean, in its historical branch, we have this impression, and this is actually Norman Davies, among others, making this humble confession. You see, telling the story of the past is about actually doing an impossible task of presenting the past. Why? Actually, and it was, I believe, also evident in your previous presentations. In the urban studies or in heritage studies, we are frantically trying to translate the three-dimensional reality interactions into two-dimensional storytelling, which is actually, yes, just writing academic book or monograph, yes, or journal paper. So yes, this is impossible. Mission Impossible is about finding the key, yes, how to translate what otherwise seems to be pretty I would say impossible to be translated fully. And this is again how to translate this three-dimensional social construct, the past, into the present, as the language, as the vocabulary, the symbolism, symbolic meaning of the present. Nevertheless, we are doing this. Yes, we are frantically trying to translate the past into the present, and the language that I seem to follow is been already codified by Pierre Nora and his lieu de mémoire. See, I find it very relevant, Nora's concept of lieu de mémoire, especially when trying to grasp the very intriguing phenomenon, you see, of the post-communist nostalgia in the symbolic landscape of urban spaces in Central Europe. Yes, for those of you who happen, I'm sure, to travel across Central Europe, or even more broadly, like, yes, I mean, metaphorically going from Lviv to to Albania, I'm sure you have come across with a number of places which actually are being kind of reinvented for the purpose of making the memory of the otherwise pretty gloomy past, the communist era, a legitimate part of the current present day symbolic landscape of urban spaces. So for those of you in Krakow, I'm sure yes, the Nowa Huta neighborhood might be excellent empirical case study, yes, for like studying again this nostalgia, post-communist nostalgia, but in a very specific way, actually constructed. I'll get back to this a bit later on. But you see, the most extreme case, at least to me, of this post-communist nostalgia, you see, in symbolic landscape of urban spaces, put it as broadly in Central Europe. I mean, former communist bloc is the capital city of Albania, actually. This is a truly intriguing case, yes, of this excessive nostalgia, yes, post-communist nostalgia in the symbolic landscape of the urban space. But yes, I will get back to this bit later on. Now, you see, my aim is to simply share with you a few conceptual insights on how to actually, apply this concept of lieu de mémoire as introduced by Nora into the very empirical study of nostalgia in the symbolic landscape of urban spaces in Central Europe. So maybe, yes, we would now move to the very definition, you see, very definition of the concept itself. What makes Pierre Nora's concept of lieu de mémoire a kind of avant-garde or kind of alternative approach to social science, or specifically again telling the story about the past to the present generations? Well, mémoire, according to Pierre Nora, is actually about the place, physical place, understood as non-material construct. So in this case, telling the story about the past to the present is about deconstructing, yes, this three-dimensional historical meaning into our say, like cognitive world. So again, unlike classic historical empirical toolbox used, no, we are not very much concerned with actually like descriptive linear storytelling about like a certain period of time in a certain place, physical place. Lieu de mémoire is actually about the generational cultural memory being transmitted, yes, to subsequent generations through the conceptual lens of defining the place as a non-material construct. And you see, and this allows us actually to understand why and how remembering and forgetting in urban lieu de mémoire socially this missing element, this crucial element of this transmission of the meaning of the past into the language of the present. The place is a story, socially constructed. That's the meaning, you see, of Nora's concept. So more precisely, yes, what might be this? I mean, like the example of lieu de mémoire. I mean, a French term might be translated into English in terms of like realms of memory. boundaries of memory, realms of memory, lieux de mémoire. In this case, the boundaries, the realms of memory mean material, symbolic, and functional places. Material, symbolic, and functional places which emerge, which appear as a consequence, of course, as an output of social interactions between memory, the way we understand and construct the meaning of the past, and history as a kind of storytelling, yes, meaningful cause and effect composition. Now, as Ziółkowska and Leśniak argue, one of the examples you see of that kind of, yes.
Excuse me, could you conclude? Going to the conclusion?
Yes, Paweł, yes. So I'm just warming up. Sorry for this. Okay, so yes. Yes. Well. In that case, yes, I would immediately move to the like the final cut. Well, just skipping this methodological part for the very conclusion. You see, we already have. I mean, we evidenced interesting empirical studies on this topic. So. One of them comes from Barbara Tornquist-Plewa, Cosmopolitan Memory, European Memory, and Local Memories in Central and Eastern Europe. So you see the post-communist nostalgia in symbolic landscape of urban spaces in Central Europe, broadly, yes, post-communist Europe, as a subject of political instrumentalization. Also nostalgia in urban spaces as a subject of commodification. I'm sure Paweł would elaborate on this. So nostalgia, yes, after both material and non-material, lieux de mémoire, manifestations of this, yes, making the past that was deemed, that was actually kind of stigmatized after 1999, making this past a legitimate element of the present through, for instance, yes, commodification, and this is Nowa Huta story, also Tirana. So, yes, I believe very interesting study from Barbara Tornquist-Plewa, but also, and perhaps with this I would need to conclude, another interesting research from Irena Rajfowa. The pleasure of continuity, reading post-socialist nostalgia. So you see, the nostalgia here is about kind of going beyond the mainstream memory of the otherwise stigmatized past by trying to re-legitimate this remnants, both material and non-material, of the communist past as integral, legitimate component of the present. Yes, but also as a source of cultural enjoyment, but above all, the backbone of post-communist identity in urban space. So yes, again, yes, thank you, Paweł. Yes, for this. Yes, keeping an eye on timing. Yes, so yes, I believe very intriguing topic. Yes, studying nostalgia as lieu de mémoire in symbolic landscape of urban spaces in broadly understood post-communist world in Central Europe, both as some example of commodification, source of cultural enjoyment, yes, but also again a frantic attempt to build the bridge between now and then. Nostalgia after the remnants of communism, yes, as like making this otherwise stigmatized past a legitimate part of the present. So yes, with this I need to conclude. I know, yes. So yes, just again, as I promised, a few insights on this. Again, yeah. So Thank you very much, yes, for your kind attention. And I would now need to get back to my major duty, yes, in the panel. We have the last speaker, the last speaker in the panel. Yes, Fiorenzo Fantus, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. Hello, Fiorenzo. And his contribution on foreigners as actors of Europeanization of two Polish cities, ideas for a sociological understanding. So Fiorenzo, please, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gregor. Thank you very much for having me, to the organizer. Also, thank you. I would like to thank my supervisor, Professor Marek Nowak and Professor Paweł Kubicki for their patience and their constant support. I don't hide a little bit of emotion, as it's the first time I'm speaking as a PhD candidate in an international conference. But let's go to the to my presentation. So I'm now presenting you a new research. So I'm not providing you with outcomes. I'm outlining what we were working about in this month. I am in my first year, the first year of my doctoral studies. So the idea is to investigate foreigners as actors of Europeanization of two Polish cities. These two Polish cities are Poznań and Kraków. You have here an image of Poznań, and you can already see how the city is developing. This is a business center which is near the main station. Here, for giving you an example how fast it is, in just 1 year, this building is growing up, and it's supposed to be the headquarters. It's called Nowy Rynek. So it's supposed to be in duality with the Stary Rynek, that is at the center of the city, and it's supposed to be the headquarters of Allegro.pl. So let's go with some, yes, let's go with some preliminary observation. Again, this image is of Poznań. It's another point about the internationalization of the city. This is a curious moment when the two goats are crossing their horns at the top of the public building in the Stary Rynek. So I will provide some data that are well known at this point in Poland. We don't have the data from the this year census already, of course, and actually they are. I've seen that they are not really focused on outlining what's the situation regarding the migrants in the Polish society, because they are really poor, if I might say, in investigating the presence of foreigners. But going back to the last available stable data in 2011, 96% of the citizens of Poland declared themselves Polish. We had back then only less than 1% of the total population that were describing themselves as permanent foreign residents. Poland has been known for a long time as a country of emigration, while in the process that's it's also been called migration transition, starting with 2016, has seen the epoch-making turn point, we will say, because since 2016, the numbers of immigrants is higher than the number of emigrants. So now Poland is supposed to be, we don't know how much. How long this will go on, but it's supposed to be a net immigration country of arrival. We have a problem actually with the numbers of people that are coming to Poland. This is due to the statistics which are taking into account, as you can see in this slide, they are taking into account first resident permits, and basically they are taking into account what we can call work employment related residence permit. Those have a big problem. Those entails a big problem, as some of these permits actually can be granted during the same year to the same person more than once. So these numbers has to be really under scrutiny all the time, and it's an issue that in this research we need to address in the best way possible. Apart from that, nonetheless, Poland has been the biggest receiver of inflow of immigrants in 2019. We refer to 2019 as the last year with stable data before the pandemic. This is quite evident. Since then, things are changing. Scholars are already investigating the changes, but we prefer to address these preliminary remarks while having stable data. 724,000 of first resident permits were granted for non-European Union citizens in Poland. Of these, 625,000 permits were granted to people coming from outside the European Union. This is a huge number compared to the second in the list, which is Germany. And we can see that Poland is now on an outstanding position, not only in this in relation to the numbers of immigrants, but also for other specific features. Of course, I will go through this quite quickly. It's already 5 minutes. Of course, we know that the majority of immigrants are Ukrainians, and there are, and also they are choosing Poland as the main destination of their flows. Are they settling in Poland? This is to be ascertained in these years, because we have a lot of surveys that say that Ukrainians want also to move further, for example, to Germany. The same proportion of people, almost the same proportion of people moving from Ukraine to Poland, which is almost 80% of their emigration flow. The 77% of Belarusian are also coming to Poland as a first destination of their emigration. We have also numbers that are related to permanent residence in the country. As you can see, they are much lower. We are not reaching for 2019 80,000 people stably here in the country. And also here you can see the definitions. They are a little bit, this is a copy paste of the official document from the statistic office of the country. As you can see, it's a little bit questioning how exactly a document is confirming the right for a permanent residence, and how exactly is different from the registration of residence. This, of course, can be addressed, but it's giving some uncertainty again. We have also interesting movements related to some kind of in between permanent and temporary stay in the country, which is the number of foreign students that are coming to Poland. What's interesting here is that they've been on the rise for all this year, coming to a 6.4% in the 2019, when at the beginning of the century they were only 0.4%. As you can see, I put this piece of news. Actually, we are interested, as this data analyst selective, we are interested in defining how many immigrants are living in Poland. And you see the number is quite different. You can see in the news different numbers, 2 million, 1 million. Here the number is quite clear, it's 1,270,000. This is something that our research will try to address in the correct way, but actually it's a little bit questioning. Another feature, another very important evidence that we have is that urbanization, it's on the rise in Poland. This piece of news is based on a study with the participation of the University of Warsaw. 1.25 million hectares of natural land has been converted into urban areas. This is a huge increase, and it's outpacing actually the growth in population. And it's also putting Poland in an outstanding position in relation to other European countries. Where are the foreigners going? This is actually not having cultural heritage as the main focus, but we believe that urban cultural heritage is playing a major role in this settlement of the foreigners. As you can see here, but this data, this evidence is also for permanent residents. They are settling in the urban areas. It's difficult to assess all the other people where they are really choosing to live. So at this point, we are almost 2/3 of the presentation. A little bit unconventional. I would like to propose the possible research hypothesis. I'm doing this also to catch your attention because I get that you might be already well acknowledged with all these dynamics in the Polish society. So at this point, we can start asking about what's happening in the Polish cities. For example, we think that the migration-driven urban diversification, it's in the nation state. It's at the very first steps, and this might be a possibility to observe and study new social processes. Hypothesis number 2 is that the natives and the foreigners will possibly modify the collective perception and representation of Polish cities under the pressures that comes from economic processes and that are inducing urban diversification. Of course, we think also that there will be some kind of residential selectivity by the foreigners and clustering. This has been observed already in different situations, but also in comparable situations. So we expect this. We expect to detect also the emergence of social innovation. On my side, as a PhD student, I hope we will detect that. That would be very much interesting. And we will have some interest in see what's happening with the studentification of our cities. There are clusters of students in the major cities, and they make themselves recognizable by speaking also different languages. This is something that has been already reported. Scales of analysis are very important for our research. We define 6 of them. Of course, there is the individual history, which is important, the social neighborhood scale, where social practices can be observed effectively. The state-national scale, in a context of globalization, it's still very much important, and it's important intertwined with the European scale, while the one it's determined by the other in a process, in a directive process of growth and development, as we have seen in Poland and in other states that were in the accession in 2004. Globalizing city scale is the scale that we are choosing as identifying the scale more, let's say, more nearly the processes that we can observe in Krakow and Poznan. And then the global scale, which is, let's say, not an arrival stage, but an evidence stage of analysis, where we can find New York, as I think most of you are very well acquainted with the study of Professor Sassen and with the global city configuration that she has been provided during the last decades. So at this point, we are trying, in these days and weeks, we are at the level of desk research. We are trying to provide an introductory contextualization. I'm speeding up a bit because I see that the time is going away. So of course we are trying to identify the main points in the historical development. We will stop at the 2019, the year 2019, as the last that would be we will be able to define for some, let's say, assessment certainty, and we will try to outline some possible evolution. I guess I have still 1 minute and a half in the introductory contextualization. We are going to intensify our observations on Krakow and Poznan. And of course, they expect that the features of the processes of Europeanization, they come into the frame here, especially after 2004. We expect to have Krakow, Poznan, and a possible third case, let's say, comparative, into brackets, case in an Italian or some cities like Trieste, for example. We are working on this. We can see also in a perspective of longue durée, in relation to their position in the world system, their peripheral or semi-peripheral position. We will try to define how the processes of globalizing processes are affecting them. So here, and I need to conclude in 5 seconds. Here, I have some examples of the news. I focused on the ideas that are the news that are available on the media outlet. You see that in Krakow there is an attention. There was an attention. The first article is 2017. There was an attention about who are these people, why are you staying here? And 2 years later, it's already on the go. A proactive attitude in defining some supports for the foreigners. While if you read this data, you see that the uncertainty on the numbers, on the amount of persons from abroad in the city is completely undefined. We have official data for 45,000 people, but they think that they might be in the city council. They think that it might be 5 to 70,000. And if we hear from the Ukrainian, informally from the Ukrainian consulate, the Ukrainians can be already 100,000. Here, the case of Poznan, it's a different take. Poznan, it's more on the side of becoming a service provider in the global business network. And here, this is the case which is irrefutable. It's Poznan, it's next to Baltimore and Shanghai when it comes to shared services provided to their organization by IKEA. This is very much interesting in terms of people, high-skilled immigrants that are coming to Poznan from abroad, and they are starting their career or proceeding in their career, and they're taking their families. I will skip this work-life project, but it's similar. And so the questions are simple. Who are these foreigners anyway? As many scholars are asking. I think I'm finishing in one minute, not more. They are asking since, let's say, the starting of the century. What's interesting is this is defined by Asbrock, Lemmer, Becker, Kohler, and Wagner as a social category, which implies difference. This is mainly what we will difference, and the practices, the social practices, this is mainly what we will be researching. We will define the features of these foreigners, their axiology, the set of social and political values, and of course, social capital, power relation, this concept of anchoring, and these other concepts of embeddedness, related to departure from their origin country, their mobility and their rootedness here in Poland. I think I will stop here. Thank you for your passion. I've exceeded my time, and thank you. I hope I've been clear.
Thank you indeed, Ferenc. Wonderful, yes. Pretty promising research designs. Actually, Ferenc, I have an answer to your question why foreigners decide to stay in Krakow. Due to the so-called emotional, Krakow is an emotional vampire. See, once injected, then no way you can resist the temptation, to actually stay in Krakow. Anyway, wonderful. Now we need to conclude. So I would love to thank you wholeheartedly, all of you, to all of you who have contributed presentations. So yes, wonderful session. And I guess the last but not least, I think Paola, has an announcement to make, please.
Sorry, my microphone was clear. So the announcement is that following this conference, we are holding in 19th of June the Italian conference of the project CHIC, and it will be in pre-disaster planning for urban cultural heritage. I'm inviting the ones that are interested in the topic. The opening will be by Rohit Jigazu, that is from Micro, and the chair will be Cristina Musacchio, Daniela Mayer, Tomoyuki Mashiko, Pompisit Huyakorn, and the panel of discussion with international conference. We are going to select the contribution, and the call would be launched today, tonight for me, that I'm in Bangkok, today for you. And that first deadline is for the full abstract, 20th of May. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, yes. So follow up, to be continued. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much, Paola. Now, I need to again thank all of you for your contributions, and I will now pass the voice to Paweł. Professor Paweł Kubicki will now take over the moderation for the subsequent panel. So, yes,